Well, the calls for House Speaker Greg Fergus to resign came again and again and again from the Conservatives and the Bloc Québécois this week.
I think we've been clear. I think the Speaker should have resigned. He knew what he did was wrong, and he's lost confidence of most of the MPs in the House.
He should go, and we should find someone out of the 338 persons in that parliament, preferably a woman, it might be time, to try to do the job properly as it should be done, and that's the end to it.
Fergus admits he made a serious mistake filming that now notorious video for the Ontario Liberal Convention, since the Speaker role is meant to be nonpartisan. This led to a lot of finger-pointing from all parties as the Prime Minister and the Conservative House Leader, we learned, also found to have filmed partisan videos in their Parliament Hill offices. The Prime Minister's was from several years ago. Well, here to check the political pulse this week are our three party insiders. I'm joined by Greg McEachern, former Liberal ministerial staffer, now at Can Strategies; Melanie Richer, former Director of Communications for the New Democratic Party, now a senior consultant with Earnscliffe Strategies; and Fred Delory, former Conservative campaign manager and partner at North Star Public Affairs. All right, gang. Greg, let's start with the Fergus thing, the tone and tenor of the House of Commons as it rose, because you think this was a misplay this week, the way this whole issue was handled. Why don't you get us started with why you think that?
I think it was a misplay by Andrew Scheer, and I think it was a misplay by the Conservatives having Andrew Scheer lead this on their behalf. So first on Greg Fergus. He made some mistakes. Don't really want to invest a lot of time in defending them. He's apologized numerous times.
Mistakes were made, yes.
And I think that's good. You know, I think he might have assumed a victory lap or a honeymoon after he got the job that wasn't there. But with Andrew Scheer, he is somebody who's been Speaker. He's been the Conservative Party leader. He's still around. I don't know how that worked for the Progressive Conservatives under Diefenbaker. I don't think great. I'm not sure why he's still there. And I don't understand why you get him to do these things when he has this much baggage. This boomeranged on the Conservatives really harshly. I mean, the NDP ethics critic is saying that Scheer should be brought before and said, you know, pointed out the hypocrisy of him criticizing Greg Fergus for something he had done himself and been fined for, right, and yet had acted like nothing had ever happened until it came out. And, you know, what I saw on social media was a lot of reminders of why Andrew Scheer was not successful in 2019. You know, there was a clip of Melissa Lantsman there. In 2019, Melissa Lantsman co-authored an op-ed that said Andrew Scheer, based on his attitude towards the gay and lesbian community around Pride events, should not stay on as leader. Sarah McIntyre, who worked in communications for Stephen Harper, said that at the same time. Lantsman's now deputy leader and Scheer is House leader. Those meetings must be a lot of fun. But you should not pick somebody with that much baggage, especially when there is a lot of younger MPs on the Conservative side who have a lot of promise and a lot of talent. Right.
So just to fill in some of the gaps there, Andrew Scheer was found by my colleague Elizabeth Thompson to have filmed a video in support of Arpancana, the Conservative candidate in the recent Oxford by-election. Did it in his office, inappropriate, fined $500 by the Board of Internal Economy. We also learned that it was the Arpancana campaign that paid the fine rather than Andrew Scheer paying the financial penalty himself. But Melanie, as the Conservatives like to remind us, Justin Trudeau did a video in his office fundraising for the party. The party paid that fine. So there's a lot of these things going around. But to Greg's point, that if you're going to come after the Speaker for his failures, maybe you need a clean sheet yourself, I guess. Where do you stand on it?
Totally. What's that expression? People in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. I think that came really true for Andrew Scheer this weekend. And you're right. This is somebody who has a lot of political baggage. When he was Speaker, when he was leader, and this is maybe not somebody we should have had, or that the Conservatives should have had out talking about how Greg Fergus was acting unethical or was acting partisan. Maybe they could have picked somebody else to lead that charge. What I found was maybe a misplay on this is folks were so focused on this issue this week, and outside of, Ottawa, nobody has any idea what this means, and nobody understands how a partisan person shouldn't be partisan, right? Like that's a little bit complicated. So when folks are, looking at their budgets and looking at the holidays coming up and thinking maybe I can afford a little bit of less this year, the fact that MPs from all parties really focused a lot on this week was maybe not the tone that people are feeling at home.
Yeah, two things I've read. clearly the speaker shouldn't be filming partisan videos. I mean, because of the referee and neutrality role. I'm kind of agnostic as to whether MPs and cabinet ministers film political videos in their office. Right. I mean, they're partisan people doing partisan things, but Scheer's the House leader, so if Scheer doesn't lead this, who does?
Right, well, that's it. I mean, there is a lot of other talent on the benches that could have. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's right. Two wrongs at the end of the day don't make a right here. What what Speaker Fergus did was egregious. And I do think he should resign. He is, I think he's lost the confidence of the official opposition and another opposition party. And you've got to be the referee. You have to be able to at least appear to be neutral and believe to be neutral. When you're doing that, he didn't just do a video. He talked about his Liberal days in the video and talked about working on the Liberal campaign. So it is true that Mr. Scheer did make, made some mistakes as well. At the end of the day, he's not Speaker. He can't resign from that role. He's not expected to be neutral. And the RPN campaign had to pay the fine because it was an election expense. Mr. Scheer couldn't pay that himself.
Really? Like
it would be an Elections Canada expense because it was.
But the Board of Internal Economy penalized him for inappropriate conduct. He should have to pay that fine.
No, I would think, having run a lot of campaigns, I think Elections Canada would look at this as an expense, though. This fine did come from a result of a political action, so it had to be the local campaign that would have to fund it.
Well, Elections Canada will audit. So I don't know. It would seem strange to me that if you can be fined for inappropriate political support for a candidate, the candidate who benefited from that could then pay your fine. Do you know what I mean?
No, but it's an expense for his campaign because it benefited his campaign. That video was basically if I rented out a studio somewhere and I'd have to pay the fee for that studio.
Yeah, I gotcha. All right, yeah. Okay, all right, Mel, this is the problem. The Speaker's rules don't make a lot of sense, parliamentary rules, and the financing rules make even less sense. Right. All right, Mel, you have a positive pick for us. Yes. What do you think was the best play this week?
Absolutely. I think the best play was dental care. I think the NDP showed that they were able to get the Liberals to do something in the benefit of Canadians, and I think that the Liberals and the NDP showed that they can work together and get stuff done for people, and people across the country are going to be able to benefit from this in a really real way come January, come next year. Mm-hmm. So I think that was a moment that showed that there is still some goodwill in Ottawa that is working together to get things done for people, and we know that dental care is so important for people for health reasons, but also just for self-confidence, for all these things. So I think it'll be really great when this program rolls out next year. There's a lot of conversations happening when the NDP first got into the deal with the government that, the NDP is just getting played, they're not going to get anything out of the Liberals, and, proof that they were able to get what they wanted out of this. So I think that's great news.
Fred, do you think the dental program is bulletproof for an election campaign? I was speaking with Lisa Raitt about this earlier this week, and she made the point that in the 2019 election, they were constantly being challenged about the Canada Child benefit that the Liberals brought in, and they had to say in the campaign, we're not going to touch it, because people liked it and came to rely on it. Right. Do you think dental has a level of popularity and support that it could survive because Poilievre does want to reduce the deficit, right?
Right. It depends how far down the road we are in the implementation, because it takes time to get this whole program up and running. If we're only partially through, people it's not going to resonate. So it's easy to pull that back if you're looking to look for cuts on something that hasn't been spent yet. So there is that possibility. But at the end of the day, this does look like if it does get all rolled out, this is one of those legacy building things the NDP could point at for decades to come, that look, they got this done, just like healthcare was really their invention, not the federal Liberals.
Mm-hmm. Right, so Greg, do you think this one could get to that level where it does become a thing you can't campaign against in terms of the need to reduce the size of government spending and the deficit?
I was trying to find some data of Canadian support on this, and the most recent that I could find was 2019. Ipsos said 86% of Canadians supported, in theory, a program like this. And I think, for the points that Mel has made, it's how it affects your other health, but also other things. I remember American TV shows used to have makeovers where they would, because of their medical system where you couldn't be covered, that would be part of it as well. But in Canada, this was done through a patchwork of sometimes people were covered by government, sometimes by private, sometimes by charities. I think Unison Fund, which is a fund that helps musicians, for example, if you're the lead singer of a band and you knock your two front teeth out and you are living on a musician's salary, the Unison Fund is there for that type of thing. But hopefully now there will be another program that people can access that, is a bit more broad.
Okay, I had no idea. I know there's things like artist relief funds and emergency funds, but it makes sense that something like that would be there. Okay, Fred, yeah, you got a play of the week for us. What do you got for us today?
Yeah, so Anna Polyev, the wife of Pierre Polyev, went to Quebec this week, where she's from, where she grew up. She was raised there in Montreal, and she did an interview with TVA, and it was a fantastic interview talking about conservative values and how they are Quebec values. And the coverage there was amazing. And Mario Dumont, who is a commentator at TVA, former small c conservative politician, said that she's Pierre Poilievre's secret weapon. And it's one of those things, if you look back to the success Pierre has had over the last year, one of the most successful things is the ad that he put out that was voiced by her, or the other ads with her in it. And it just shows, when they do run that type of message, how well it works for him and for the party. If you recall back last spring, we had these by-elections where we were way up in the polls, and the by-elections were pretty well a failure for the Conservatives. That we didn't grow our vote at all.
Yeah.
People didn't come out to vote for us. So they went to ground, and they came out with this more positive image to push out. And I think if they keep doing that, if they keep, people are tired of Justin Trudeau, and if the Conservatives go on this message and showing this, and they are going to contrast and throw punches, but if they keep showing the soft side of him and having Anna out there in front, I think it's going to be very successful for the party.
For a guy who famously came on the show and said it's power in politics, not power in feelings, you're getting into the feely side of it. Look at this, Fred, right here. This is going to be the thing we're going the spin-off of this show that we'll be launching in the new year. But Greg, Fred does make a good point about the importance of softening your image, expanding your image beyond sort of that, the day-to-day impression you leave as a partisan politician, and being well accompanied, can help, a political leader reach people.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that some of the takes that the spouse of the Conservative leader takes is probably unpopular with a good chunk of the party. If she's in Quebec and she's talking about a woman's right to choose, my guess is that there are social conservatives, and I actually saw a few of them comment on this yesterday on Twitter, that are very unhappy. And there would be MPs in that party that would be very unhappy with that. I encourage people to go back and look at Michelle Rempel's tweets. She, although I disagree with her on a lot, she understood that the Conservative Party needed to move on issues around, gender, sexuality, and a woman's right to choose. And I think, if there's going to be a fly in the ointment for the Conservatives, it might be on this, and that the spouse of the leader is taking some stands that the base of the party might not be comfortable with.
But Mel, from a communication standpoint, having the young immigrant wife of the leader delivering that message is an effective vehicle that reassurances from guys who look like me in suits like this maybe can't give to people who are concerned about the social conservative agenda.
Totally. And, we've seen that Pierre Polyev, to become the next prime minister, actually needs to talk to women. And that's the group of people in Canada that he does have a hard time with. So by putting Anna Polyev out and having her do interviews, I think you're softening him, you're making him look like a real person instead of just looking, like the king of the debate club, which is not going to help with women across the country. No, but it isn't, right? And I think the threat for Polyev, if he does put his wife out, or she does the rounds with interviews, is those moments where we've seen him maybe not do so well in the last few weeks, berating the young woman CP journalist.
Yeah.
That will totally counteract what Anna Polyev does. I think the other opportunity here that was really good is the fact that she's out in Quebec and she's talking to Quebecers, and as a Quebecer, which we haven't really seen in a while. And we know that that's also something that the Conservatives need to do in the lead up to the next election. And I was listening to the clip with Lajotte, and I was like, oh yeah, she sounds like she talks about the TV shows that she watched, and those are the same TV shows that people in my family were watching as well. So I think that was a good move, and it'll be interesting to see how they utilize her going into the next election.
And Fred, it's interesting to see that strategy because we've seen in the English Canada strategy, the NDP Liberal Coalition is their target. And in French, they talk about the Liberal Bloc Coalition, and they talk about the Liberal Bloc carbon tax. And it is the region where the party has struggled the most, but there is some potential there they see on affordability and with a spokesperson like Anna Poilievre potentially.
That's it. There's 78 seats in Quebec. Conservatives traditionally win between 5 and 12 of them, which is not enough. Right now, a lot of seat models have the Conservatives winning over 200 seats, and mostly coming from English Canada. But if there could be a breakthrough there, and I know that's, that doesn't happen often. It's every 30 or 40 years Conservatives have a massive wave and they sweep Quebec. I think we could be hitting that time frame in the next election.
Greg, just on that, and we got about 30 seconds left. Where do you think, quickly, I'll give you the last word, things are now that the House of Commons has risen for the rest of the year? What do you think the political situation is?
Contrary to the media panel earlier, Liberals are not, rehanging drapes because of one poll.
Right.
What they want is the media to provide more scrutiny and a fair balance. And we know that some reporters have struggled trying to cover the Conservative leader. So I think there's a little bit of spring in the steps of Liberals, but they're being very realistic. I'd watch some growth in PMO and the need to bring in more comms people. That's what I'd be looking for early in the next year.
Okay. All right, we got to leave it there, gang. Thanks so much. Have a Merry Christmas. Have a happy holiday. That's Greg McKecker, Melanie Richer, and Fred Delory here with us on a Friday night.